right, and I'm recording on our end too. Hi, Elliott.
Hi, Danielle.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good.
We have a special guest here. Oh, he's not special anymore because this is like his series.
Am I not special?
No, because you are our, intrepid platform reporter or something?
Oh, he's a
Something like
reporter?
that. I don't know if I'm a reporter, but no, we're doing a series. We did the preamble last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess. Full disclosure, I was working nights last week, so I was not going to be able to do the SOP. But this week we can do the SOP. Unless, did you guys do the SOP already without me?
Mm-mm. No,
Awesome. So we'll do it with me.
Yes.
Cool. So we just want to go line by line and read it and talk about it.
Yes.
All right, let's do it. We
the members of the Libertarian Party,
challenge the cult of the omnipotent state
and defend the rights of the individual.
We hold that all individuals have the right to exercise sole dominion over their own lives
and have the right to live in whatever manner they choose,
so long as they do not forcibly interfere with the equal right of others to live in whatever manner they choose.
Governments throughout history have regularly operated on the opposite principle.
That the state has the right to dispose of the lives of individuals and the fruits of their labor.
Even within the United States, all political parties other than our own grant to government the right to regulate the lives of individuals and seize the fruits of their labor without their consent.
We, on the contrary, deny the right of any government to do these things and hold that where governments exist,
they must not violate the rights of any individual.
Namely, 1. The right to life.
Accordingly, we support the prohibition of the initiation of physical force against others.
2. The right to liberty of speech and action.
Accordingly, we oppose all attempts by government to abridge the freedom of speech and press,
as well as government censorship in any form.
And 3. The right to property.
Accordingly, we oppose all government interference with private property, such as confiscation,
nationalization,
and eminent domain,
and support the prohibition of robbery, trespass, fraud, and misrepresentation.
Since governments, when instituted, must not violate individual rights, we oppose all interference by government in the areas of voluntary and contractual relations among individuals.
People should not be forced
should not be forced
to sacrifice their lives and property for the benefit of others.
They should be left free by government to deal with one another as free traders,
and the resultant economic system, the only one compatible with the protection of individual rights,
is the free market.
Yeah, the omnipotent state, right? The cult of the omnipotent state. You guys were real excited to talk about that last week.
Because it's a cult.
Yeah, because it's a cult. I think there's one important thing that I wanted to talk about before we actually dived into the text was this is called like the Dallas Accords or something to that effect. It was approved at the convention in Dallas in 1974, like it says in the platform here. It's at lp.org/platform for anyone listening. There's a very key couple words here. Where it says in the middle there, where governments exist, and in the last paragraph it says since governments, comma, when instituted, comma. So what's the very, and there's a reason I'm talking about this with Danielle and Elliott on the call here on the podcast, because it's your podcast and I'm a guest, obviously, but
recurring guest.
Why is that such an important part of this statement of principles?
Because government doesn't always have to exist. We could just agree on things together in a voluntary society.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like a really anarchist statement, Danielle. Are you coming around?
No, not at all. I like order and structure. Thank you very much.
Okay, so but that's the important part that I wanted to express, and this is an important part, and it's part of like growing kind of an inclusive Libertarian Party. Is this statement of principles adopted as part of the Dallas Accords means that this is a party for minarchists and anarchists alike. This is a party for all who want to roll back the state. And I say that like I'm not, I just say libertarian because I live in this state and it's the largest state that's ever existed. So that's a very important part of sort of our LP heritage and culture, is that we're not exclusively anarchist or minarchist, but we do provide we sort of provide this thing. It's like, okay, you can be a minarchist, but like where governments exist, they are held back by these kinds of things, these kinds of principles. These are our first principles, and it's what unites us as even people with um, minor ideological differences in that regard.
Yeah.
But anyway, cult. Oh no, yeah. Go ahead, Daniel. Sorry.
No, I agree. I just think it's really cool. I mean, because I'm the same kind of like, oh, screw the government, but like, I just kind of like knowing how things are gonna go and how things are gonna run, and I love that like, I can respect that you would prefer to not have anything governing what people are doing, and that you can respect that I would prefer to maybe have some things in place to keep things predictable is my reason.
And I think the essence to me about the Dallas Accords is really to focus on what Rothbard, who probably would have been one of the pivotal figures at that accord, right, said it's not really are you anarchist or minarchist, are you pro-state, are you anti-state, it's do you hate the state, right? Like, so you can have minarchists that think that the state is a necessary evil, but if they don't hate the state, then it's sort of irrelevant, right? And if you could say somebody that we should abolish the state, but if they don't hate the state, then maybe they're not going to do anything about it. I feel much more common cause with people who chafe at the bit at every authoritarian thing that the state does, even if they think it's necessary, because I feel like they are constantly paying attention to the evils of the state and they're far less likely to forgive anything, right? So even if they think that you ought to revolt and replace with a new state, they're at least not ignoring or playing down the evils of the state. Whereas somebody doesn't hate the state, they're much more likely to go and just say, oh, it's fine, whatever, no worry. Oh, it's just a little bit of violence, just a little bit of aggression, no worries, right? So I think that's the essence of what this gets at with me, of anarchist versus minarchist in the Dallas Accord, and really the whole platform being sort of state agnostic, is that let's hate the state regardless whether you think it has to exist or not.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And that leads us into talking about the state as a cult. We, the members of the Libertarian Party, challenge the cult of the omnipotent state and defend the rights of the individual. Yeah, I mean, so like my thoughts on this have always, not always, not at all always, because I came from a very statist place. I came from a place where I thought the state was the best thing ever, and um, part of that is just like we, just people generally, are raised on first principles, largely first principles from childhood. Before we can even walk properly or talk properly, we're taught, okay, I mean, you listen to authority, and the authorities in the room, whether it's a public school or a traffic cop or what have you, um, you know, appease and placate those people. They know what's best for you, and they will keep you safe, sound, and secure. Um, that very cultish in a way. It is. I mean, number one, it does rely upon um, just completely blind faith, because you are basically saying that against all evidence the contrary, like the state does mean what's best for you. And I'm sure there's individual actors. I have family in the government, but there's I certainly don't want to like paint everyone with a broad brush. But at the end of the day, like if you're asking yourself, um, what does this mean? What is the cult of the omnipotent state? It really is just a firm, like just unwavering belief that you're essentially ingrained, that's almost imbued in you as a given, that the state has to exist and that it is necessary to accomplish goodness in the world. To accomplish things like education or healthcare or security or just or prosperity. Um, we in the Libertarian Party, I think, strive to defeat that notion. That's that's the probably the biggest thing is just recognizing how much work there is to break what is effectively imbued in people from a very, very young age.
It's actually something that I feel like resounds a lot in the social work field because we are trained as social workers to be these angels that come and rescue children or rescue people, but we are agents of the state as social workers, and we're trained to believe that we're being helpful and we're doing things for people that need to be done, especially the CPS workers. Um, and I think that that gets really like it really got pushed into our heads in school. And fortunately, I read a book called Unfaithful Angels, and I was like, ha, you're not even real social workers. And clearly, I'm a libertarian, so I buck against everything, anyways. But I really do see that sometimes in some different areas of the state, even having worked in social work here in Washington, just seeing like people could have been the elderly folks I worked with could have been so much more independent if they hadn't been told and if we hadn't been telling them that they needed our help, that they needed these specific things that we were giving them because the state told us that we needed to give it to them. And it's just real frustrating.
Yeah, and the thing that like always annoyed me growing up was this notion that rules don't apply to everybody, right? I mean, in a certain way, I was always like destined to be a libertarian, and I don't even mean that because I am now. And it's like, oh well, there's this. No, I'm saying like, um, I've always been like violently anti-authoritarian, right? Like I've always hated any authority that wasn't very clearly legitimized through competence or excellence or usefulness. And the state is none of those. It's incompetent. It's usually subpar, and it doesn't do a good job at anything it touches. Literally, the even I mean, and this is one of my favorite things that Bob Murphy and like Walter Block point out is that even a privatized organization would be far better at war than the state is. The state completely sucks at it. So I mean, at the worst things that the state does, and the thing that it's supposed to exist for, it's not even good at. So why do we
That's
even
why they hire
bother with it?
subcontractors, Blackwater, right?
Exactly right. So who's gonna wage the wars? Subcontractors still.
Ooh.
There are there are basically two underlying assumptions that come with people who hold the state up on a pedestal. Number one is that the state is altruistic, and all the actors therein are altruistic. And number two is that they are all knowing. And I think that really does speak to the heart of like, this is a this does drive home that idea of a cult. It's just like so if I'm to put like all this power and accept all this power from one organization, and give them authoritarian control or yield authoritarian control to them to run my life, I have to believe that they both have my best interest in heart at heart, and they know what's best for me. And I think I don't want to I don't necessarily need to get too far into like pilling or anything like that, but I think it is a certain like light switch, if you will. One might call it a red pill, where you just realize, wait a minute, these people they are dumb, as like a lot of libertarians like I think get that message like right away. It's just like the government's just bad at this. They're just like slow. They're inefficient. But when you realize kind of who is able to pull the strings, who's able to, um, you know, in a corporatist pseudo-fascist system such as our own, able to what special interests are able to lobby the hardest and provide the most finances to people who make decisions over our lives. And that's kind of when you take a step back and like, this isn't just incompetence. There is there are things in play, not necessarily known by every government employee or anything. Certainly not, the great uh, public servants such as yourself, Danielle. But there is definitely like nefarious, or in your case, it was known, and you were fighting to change it, but um, there are nefarious things in play. There are nefarious motivations in play. So it's neither of those things. It's neither altruistic nor is government annoying. It's a slow, clunky bureaucracy that works actively to oppress and oppress for the benefit of a handful of few people.
If I had known that the government wasn't omnipotent when I was in the Air Force, life would have been so much better.
Could have avoided a whole bunch of shit.
I know.
Well, is it? Do we
Yeah, I
got?
mean, I was in the Navy, so yeah, I mean, there's so I've got my chops with the government. I like to think, and to an extent, I think this is it was a I don't know how you feel on your end on this, Danielle, but like I still look back at like, and I'm still like pretty proud of my 18-year-old self because I was just like like I had good intentions and that I had this sort of instinct that I did want to serve. Free college didn't hurt, but at the end of the day, it wasn't. It was something I was just like I had some sort of intrinsic motivation to do good, and that's why I don't like fully trash just like any and all government employees or anything like that. But because I think some of them really do mean that they want to do good for the world, but at the end of the day, it's just like you, there are definitely you definitely have to take a step back, and it helps to take a step back with the benefit of some distance and just be like um, asking, could this have been done another way? Could this have been done without serving nefarious means in order to enrich a handful of lobbyists at Raytheon or something to that effect?
Right.
Let's see. Next part here is talking about sole dominion over your own lives, living your life in a manner that they so choose, so long as they don't forcibly interfere with the equal right of others to live in whatever manner they choose. I thought that was we hit on that pretty hard in the preamble last 2 weeks ago, where um, it's a beautiful thing that all human beings are different and not um, not uniform, that they're not homogenous, and that they have different ways in which they want to live and experience life and what they want to do with their life. And the beautiful thing about a free society is that it enables it doesn't force 51% to rule 49%. That's what we're offering, is a society where like we don't need to be at each other's throats every 4 years determining which 51% of us is going to rule 49% with an iron fist, plus like the 50% who don't vote. Um, it's and I think that's um a necessary component to a truly like peaceful society, is one in which people get along. And if you think about it for even a few seconds, you just realize, wait a minute, most of my interactions are interactions in which I'm not constantly arguing with somebody based on what their politics or what their cultural preferences or their other personal preferences are. 90% of the time, it's just like, there's someone who on those things I could have fundamentally, majorly fundamental disagreements with. But it's just like, oh, okay, well, I mean, I want coffee and you're going to give me coffee, so I'll give you money for coffee, on my way to work. And then, maybe I'm at work and I'm working with coworkers who have fundamentally different views about the world, but, we get stuff done together because it's mutually beneficial for us. And you can find 1,000 examples of that. But just in this one like instance, it's always just like, oh yeah, but we need it. We need the state, and that's why we have to fight each other all the time. Whereas in a free society, you can live in harmony with people, even if you're not the same. Which no two people are the same, are they?
Right. And that's why I love that we have this big, vague, broad thing called the non aggression principle, because it's super easy to just go to that one statement, don't hurt others and don't take their stuff, and decide if the way that you're living your life is in line with the rest of your society, right? It's not like there's like a whole long constitution and a Bill of Rights and a bunch of court precedents that you have to look at to decide if what you're doing is the correct action. Literally, just don't hurt people, don't take their stuff.
And that's in my mind.
Isn't that amazing? Just how much simpler our way of
Yeah.
when you can conceptualize with first principles. Some might call it like overly simplistic. I would push back like, okay, what principles do you have if like you have to have some like long form policy article about is this a beneficial thing or not? The question should be, as libertarians, it's just a very simple one: is the nap? Do you rest upon others? Do you hurt them? Do you take their stuff? The answer is no. Then you can do that thing. And that's like, and you don't need a long form policy, paper. With apologies to the libertarian think tanks out there that do write long form policy articles, but it's just like if those are your first principles, you don't need to know anything else. You don't have to argue about whether 31 or 33% is the optimal tax rate, or whether the government should shut everybody down or just few people down during a disease or what. You just have to go back to those first principles. And I think for us, the biggest thing is that our first principles are human liberty for all.
And I think it's worth mentioning, like, every single time, because everybody's like, can it be that simple? Is it really just the non-aggression principle plus you own your body plus you own objects that your body controls, right? Like, can it be that simple? And it's like, well, there are definitely, it's not the entirety of morality, right? There's definitely things you should do that, aren't completely banned by the non-aggression principle and the logic that flows forth from the fact that you own your body. But all of the twists and turns and the reason why it's not that simple under a statist philosophy paradigm is because there always has to be a way to compel you to do something against your will in order for the state to exist. And we see this sort of awkward dance with Enlightenment thinkers, because pre-Enlightenment, everybody is like, dude, you barely are human. Are you the king? No, I didn't think so. You have a soul, right? So God loves you in some ways, but you're trash and don't even try.
But didn't choose you, right?
Yeah,
You're not
exactly.
divinely inspired, right?
Yeah. So with the Enlightenment, it's awkward because everybody's suddenly equal and a human being, and then they have to come up, well, back forever ago, one of your ancestors gave up all your rights and now you don't have them anymore. It's impossible for you to get them back. Or like, the veil of ignorance, and you would choose this horrible situation that you're in. Like, it's like, no. It's very simple. You didn't choose that. You don't have to choose that. You've been indoctrinated by the cult to believe that you have to give up all this shit when you absolutely do not. And if you chose not to, I recently read this morning a Solzhenitsyn quote that said, could you imagine what would happen if when the Soviet people went to take out the folks out of their homes, if everybody had been waiting right on the other side of the door with rolling pins and pipes, and when they had gone out in the street, every single, soldier and policeman was having the shit beat out of them by commoners, there would be no Soviet Union, period, right? And it just goes to show how
not that one, but
yeah, right. So there you go, right?
Yeah. It's it's definitely a thing that I always come back to is libertarians are often asked to, or not asked, it is demanded out of us for our philosophy to be sound, to offer utopian solutions. In this SOP, I didn't see the word utopia.
No,
Did I?
I don't expect utopia.
It's not even implied.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we don't have to. So we're not promising utopia. We never have. But what's interesting about the state, which is kind of the other side of the coin, is that it only needs to offer good intentions. the question is always answerable in your libertarian society. What would you do about old people? What would you do about education? What would you do about healthcare? It's like, well, I don't know. These things seem like major issues, like right now in your world with a state, with the largest state that has ever existed in human history. So it can't possibly be like that. You can't definitively in any kind of way just say like, oh, you have no answer for this. It's like you can say that, but you're right, I don't, and nor do you. Or else like homelessness would be solved, and everyone would be smart, and everything would be perfect. But statism has not offered, a utopian vision either, and it's not like we were, you know, what 2% higher taxes or 3% lower taxes away from achieving utopia, which is essentially
Hmm.
the choice that your duopoly will offer.
Pretty much.
Want to go on to like sort of the third paragraph here is just talking about in history governments regularly don't take that path, right? Their first principle or the first principle of state of the state of status, and essentially most of us when we first learn of the state, when we're first imbued with this, not Elliott because he's the one real libertarian, but um, the is that the first principle of the state is quite the opposite. It's just like, oh yeah, we can totally take your stuff and hurt you because we know what's best. Again, going back to that cultish thing, government if government has to either be, or actually it has to be both altruistic and all-knowing in order for it to justifiably steal your money and put you in a cage if you don't comply. Um, and yeah, I mean it pretty much just says just that in the third paragraph, that this has been the historical precedent set by government.
Elliot just
But then we
nodded.
good for you, Elliot. Just let me talk. That's the way to do it.
They get to hear me
Yeah,
all the
the
time.
next and then it
That's
yeah.
true.
I mean, and then the next part just shows how we're different. So we basically lay out, and I think this basically is the general, arc of the platform, is that you have the right to life, speech and action, so the right of free expression, freedom of association, and then through the right to property, which are like, yeah, hugely fundamental rights. And I think most people, like, I think it's a cliche to say that most people are libertarian. They don't even know it yet. Sorry, I'm Gary Johnson. I love you, voted for you. Uh, no, I don't think most people actually are libertarian and don't already know it. I think a lot of people do crave some semblance of control over their lives to a large extent because responsibility can be scary. But I will contend, and maybe this is where Gary was getting it from, is that most people would, on sort of a broad surface level, agree with points one, two, and three there in that fourth paragraph: right to life, right to liberty and speech of action, and the right to property. So it's when we dive into kind of the implications there and the details that these rights become, um, that people like find ways to sort of walk away from those particular first principles. And I like, number three specifically just kind of lays it out. It's like the right to property. I think, you know, the vast majority of your Trump voters and the vast majority of your Biden voters would, maybe not so much Green Party voters, but the vast majority of these folks would say, yeah, the right to property is a thing that we believe in. It's like, okay, uh, interference with private property includes confiscation, nationalization, eminent domain. That's kind of a big one. I mean,
Yeah.
who among us doesn't know, conservatives who like when you talk to them on like a surface level, it's like, okay, this is good. You believe in the free market. You believe free. So how do you feel about, taking people's land to build a wall along the southern border? Is that like
Hmm.
cool or not that? Um, I mean, that was just like it was almost like never even brought up during that whole, remember that wall debate that we had for like 4 years
Yes. Hmm.
about erect this massive, construction infrastructure project, and like the debate would always be like, is this hunk of concrete racist or not? And it's like, you'd have to steal people's land to build it, so isn't that what we should kind of be talking about here? Like seizing people's and also seizing people's money to pay for it. Like that. You can see how people, and remember this is written in 1974, but eminent domain was very much ingrained in it has been very much ingrained in American history. Nationalization, I mean, Defense Production Act during war has been invoked and was considered to being invoked this past year with COVID. The idea that government can just say, okay, your factory makes guns now because we need to kill some people. So that's what you had your little factory and it was doing its thing and it was producing profitable products, but we own it now, and we can implement nationalization to basically make you do our thing. We'll provide you just compensation. You just don't get to live life according to your dreams and visions, which was the part of the preamble I thought was beautiful, was that it constantly goes back to people's dreams, which is, what gets people up in the morning.
It's very bright and shiny and rainbowy.
Oh yeah.
Can we move on to the part where? Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, do it. Move on.
The part where we say we support the prohibition of robbery, trespass, fraud, and misrepresentation. I feel like those are really important things that people think that we're totally cool with because we're just like about freedom. But we're not cool with robbery, trespass, fraud, and misrepresentation, guys. And that kind of includes like libel, right? And what's the other one?
It sort of depends on who you're asking, right? I mean, libel is tricky, right? Because yeah, it just depends on what your opinions are on intellectual property, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always that's definitely a murky one for libertarians. Is just like, okay, at what point does intellectual property become protected property, or when it doesn't? That's one of those like kind of fantastic topics that we kind of get into because we're able to we as libertarians know that we're coming from a place assuming human freedom. It's just like, okay, where do we go from here? On the very failed podcast, Part of the Problem, no King County podcast, that's for sure. But Robbie the Fire Bernstein and Dave Smith, this was a few months ago. They had they were going back and forth on it. They took like different stances on it because they both like hardcore radical libertarians were both like, well, wait a minute, like Robbie, I think, was taking the stance of like, wait a minute, there should be some kind of intellectual property law, right? Like nobody could take my stuff. And then Dave Smith, being hardcore anarchist, kind of took the opposite approach. Just a reminder that
I think IP is fake.
That like, yeah, you could. But there are murky areas that libertarians are free to disagree with. We have in the Discord channel, which you should everyone listening, come and join. We have a friendly debate section where we have friendly debates with one another, but with a underlying assumption of mutual respect, because we know we're coming from a place that assumes human freedom.
Just like protesting, those debates are mostly friendly, right?
Right. Fiery, but mostly friendly.
Exactly.
Yes, like us Liberty bitches.
Yes.
Fiery, but mostly peaceful. Sorry, not friendly.
In your guys' case, yeah.
Like the
we promise no peaceful.
I mean, trespass just kind of folds in with private property rights. And yeah, I mean, don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. Robbery, trespass, fraud, misfriend. I mean, these are forms of taking people's stuff, right?
So my question then is, so the way that you link intellectual property to misrepresentation would be stealing someone else's idea and packaging it as your own? That's what you're saying? Or that's one of the ways that you interpret that?
That's one of the ways you could interpret that reasonably. Okay, sure. It just depends on whether an idea can be owned or not. That's basically it, right? Like,
if it counts as property.
The way I read it is that it's just saying lying. So libel is just lying about someone. Is that the one in print though? What are the two?
Oh, I mean, the legal technical definition, we don't have to worry about too much for
Right,
sure,
but that's what
right?
I read it as. Is I read it as just lying in a way that hurts people. So, but like intellectual property, yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it. Because the way I read it is like snake oil salesmen and
Yeah.
doctors and stuff like that. But you're
This one
right,
is
like there is
specifically
an
talking
interesting
about,
little yeah.
That's
sorry, it's
interesting. We
specifically
might
talking
actually
about like
get like different
contracts.
answers even just between the three of us on like what do you do with a what do you do with a snake oil salesman? And I think like the purest person, i.e. Elliot, would say something effective. Well, you write a bad Yelp review or something. I don't
Yelp
know.
for the
Yeah,
win.
you sue him. It's the American dream.
Ooh, that could also work too. Actually, suing would be an excellent thing. And that could, a snake oil salesman is fraud, right? It's not
Yeah.
even like he's selling you a product and claiming it's different versus like lying about you. That's a question of like, well, you know, what property has been damaged in that case. Now, doesn't mean that in an anarchist society you couldn't have additional rules against like liable, right? It's just saying that the base state of the LP and the Libertarian Party platform is we can get rid of fraud for sure without government. Now, if government is worth it to you so much that liable, right, is worth having a monopoly on violence and people taxing you and potentially going on forever wars and, you know, police violencing all over the place, fine. I mean, I get it. Your values are different than mine. Fair enough. But, you know, don't come conquer me to enforce, you know, liable laws that actually I think could be done peacefully anyway, right?
So describe your because I'm curious here. Describe your vision of how that would function in say an anarcho-capitalist society.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, anarchy is based on reputation, right? And when you think about something like eBay is an excellent example of this, right? Where you can't just send somebody something on eBay where it's crap quality, right? You get reviews, but also you get reviews the other direction too, right? Where it just like Uber, right? Uber rates both the driver and the rider, right? And so I could totally see, you know,
We
situations
get it,
where,
Elliot. You're banned from Uber for life. Jeez, we get it. We've heard this a million times.
I mean, it's not crazy, right? In terms of, if you think about it, right? Not necessarily like definitely not like a sort of Chinese Communist Party social credit system, but just a hey, you know, this was actually, you know, this person just sort of put it on the record. This person libeled that other person, right? And you know, if that's on a record somewhere, and you know that could end up on a record somewhere, I don't know if anybody would take note on that, but that's basically how this was enforced in communities in the beginning of time anyway, right? Is that if you end up lying about somebody and everybody catches you in that lie, right, then the community knows that about you now, and you either need to do penance with that community, or the community starts to, you know, maybe understand where they stand with you, right? And I think there are just ways, you know, wherever there is demands, wherever there's market needs, the market provides. And it's difficult for me to tell exactly how or what the correct way for the market to provide, because just like, you know, people need different types of razors, right? And people want different colors of razors. I mean, you know, I can't dictate, well, this is how it's going to be 3-bladed or 2-bladed. I can't tell you what kind of razor there's even going to be, right? Because I use a fully replaceable old school razor, whereas other people use the super fancy electric lasers. I mean, so the question is, how would a market, you know, deter liable? I mean, goodness, I imagine there'd be 5, 6, 7, 8 different ways of doing it, depending on where you are and you know, sort of which methods make sense to you to do. But, you know, I definitely know that we don't need the state to do it, especially if it's a need that people have, right? There is no need that the market ignores, right?
It's true now.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah. As I've started Airbnb-ing out my place again, it's I mean that's a sort of a comforting thing is knowing that with you know no government involvement, kind of like whatever, like I leave. I'm you know doing this podcast a couple thousand miles from my house where I live. It's not an investment property. It's my house where I rent out spare bedrooms. Um, and I feel pretty good about the whole situation, even though I'm letting strangers into my house. Um, and part of the reason, I have to maintain a certain reputation to maintain a clean house so that I have a good rating. So I have, the 5 stars and superhost status, which I have, no big deal. And
Ooh.
but also, and not every Airbnb. In fact, when I did this before, I didn't have this set up, and now it's just my thing going forward. Like Airbnb really wants you to do like um auto accept for all guests. And I'm like, no, my requirements for guests are just like verified identity and they have to not have any like negative reviews. Like if someone gave them 3 or 4 stars, I'm not gonna make it a big deal. But if they have like a 1 star review, I'm just like, okay, well this person fucked up somebody's house, so anyway, and then Airbnb has this like umbrella policy because they don't want there to be a dearth of renters within the marketplace. They make money based on just the sheer volume of rentals available and rental nights booked. So they have this umbrella insurance policy because they've worked it out that like catastrophic things, given this rating system, don't happen all that often. But if they do, you're covered up for up to like $1 million or something. Um, which, I mean, you guys have been by my house. Good luck, like yielding $1 million out of any kind of damage to my house. But yeah, it's that whole interaction that I just described is completely encompassed outside of the state. Um, it's you know, it, it's essentially a stateless interaction. I'm sure they took those dreaded roads to get to my house, but aside from that, it's a stateless interaction that holds people more or less accountable because I want to keep making money off renters and they want to keep being able to rent houses or rent houses or rooms from houses at a lower price than hotels offer. So we have this relationship and it works out and Airbnb facilitates it. So
One of my
and
favorite
if you
things,
really
by the
think about
way.
it, that is most interactions, is that you just don't find yourself in situations where fraud and libel and such become huge deals because in a free society, because you're not in a power struggle, you are seeking for mutually beneficial relationships, which I think is a very positive attribute of our philosophy.
And that's what I love about arguing anarchy with libertarians, right? Is you just give them one example and all of a sudden they argue your point for you. I mean, it's great. Um, so, that being said, I
That's not to
think.
say there's not hard questions. There are hard questions.
Oh, yes, there's always hard
Um,
questions, yes.
but but yeah, I mean, and that's why I usually just say libertarian, just because my whole thing is always just like, if I ever do make that space colony, it'll be probably some semblance of anarcho-capitalism, but um, I live here, so I just want to, if we can roll ourselves back to if we were to roll ourselves back to more of a constitutional monarchy or something similar, just be like, all right, well. I don't know if this is my ideal situation, but it is the situation at which I'm no longer going to be obsessively concerned with, um, you know, the point at which I'm not going to, obsess over like something like politics because I'm relatively free and it's not as worth my time. But right now, it's totally worth my time to hang with you guys.
Oh, thanks.
Oh,
I think your last statement pretty much like your whole example of Airbnb really covers that last paragraph, right? Voluntary and contractual relations, um, being left free to operate as traders, and the only one economic system we support, the free market.
it's simple as that.
Yeah, that wasn't a real sentence, but thank you.
I don't believe in real sentences.
Yeah, I mean,
It's true.
it really is just, yeah, I mean, it comes down to Um, no, we don't promise utopia. No, we don't say that the free market is going to solve everybody's problem and solve every defective condition of the human experience. What we can say with a great deal of certainty is that I mean, we can say the freer the market, the more prosperous the society. Even though freedom is, and then we covered this in the preamble talk, freedom is in and of itself a virtue. I believe we're imbued by whoever who you want to be believe in, but we're or by nature, but we're imbued as free people. We're supposed to live, you know, um, with those rights to free will. Um, but at the same time, like it does work, and that's and it's the one system in which I don't pretend like I'm gonna make every decision. I'm not gonna pretend that everybody else is gonna make every optimal decision for themselves or for like what their output produces for society as a whole. But I know that on balance, I trust the individual to make the decision before I trust some bureaucrat 3,000 miles away.
Absolutely. You have anything else you want to add before we wrap it up, Elliot? Oh, he's shaking his
Nope.
head. I was just hoping you'd just pantomime everything from here on out so I could describe it. Now he's nodding.
Oh,
All
yeah, no,
right.
there's no video, right?
Oh, he gave me a thumbs up and a cute smile with a head tilt.
Unintentional.
I think Dennis Kucinich one time in a radio debate showed a pie chart.
I like pie.
Yeah, I like pie too.
Well, I think we should wrap it up. We've been doing LP stuff for way too long today.
Oh my god, yes. Let's go home.
Yeah, I guess it's a full day
Yeah.
for y'all. I just sort of parachuted in to talk philosophy with you guys.
Oh, I love it.
Our viewers love it too.
You're a space cadet.
Sort of. It's the best pinball there is.
Oh. The game?
Yeah, Space Cadet pinball. Remember that?
I mean, I play real pinball at like stores and stuff. Was that one of those, or is that a computer one?
It was a computer one. It came with Microsoft. It came with like Windows XP, I want to say.
That's where he lost me. A Macintosh from like '87.
Gotcha. Look at you.
I know. I am jumping off the bandwagon though. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
I highly recommend that you sign up as a member for Libertarian Party. Like $25 a year.
lpwa.org.